Hey everyone, welcome back. Hey Nirvana, hey Yash, hey Molly, how are you guys?
Good.
Fantastic.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining once again. Hello everyone watching. If this is your second time watching, welcome back. If it's your first time watching, prepare for another fun-filled evening of questions and wildlife vet updates. Thank you so much for joining once again. So this is going to be our second Q&A where we're going to talk to Dr. Peter Rogers about the current wildlife vet online courses and modules that we're running. Hopefully you've had a chance to check some of them out, especially the cheetah and the rhino ones, which are now live. Fantastic stuff going on right there. Just to give you a little bit of a reminder, the aims for tonight is to give you a chance to ask questions about what it's like to be a wildlife vet. You can ask questions about the modules in particular that you've started or hopefully looking to start, and ask any questions really for any of the panel or Peter, or any of the sort of courses that are running with the Expedition Project. Also, it's really important that with these courses that we are doing with you guys that they are credible, they're relevant, they're beneficial to you. So please keep sending feedback, any sort of advice, any things that you'd like to see more of, or you want us to work on a bit more. Feel free, honestly, because you're the first cohort to go through these courses, and we're so excited about it. And we love the feedback that's been coming in so far, and it's been so helpful just hearing what you guys have to say. And we're improving them and working on them all the time. So please just keep sending through as much as you can. The community that we're trying to build is so important for us. So we really want to be able to interact and engage with you guys as much as possible. And Peter as well is really keen on speaking to you guys more and more. We've got a lot of fun developments that are going to be coming up in the next couple of months as well, so stay tuned. We're going to be discussing with the reps that are on screen now about some internships, online virtual internships that we're going to be working on, and we're so excited about that. So we're going to get you guys involved with that. Just so much going on, and just so happy that you guys are enjoying what you've seen so far. So before we get started, let's have a little look about where we're up to so far, and just give you a little heads up with some footage about what the courses are so far and where we're going with them. So take a look at this. So before we get live with Peter, who's actually now on site actually with some lions, so we're going to get him to join us in a minute. The typical the vet life that he lives, but he's going to join in a minute. Want to sort of have a chat with you guys about how you found the course so far, and what the modules that you've done, and sort of what are you finding most interesting. I'm going to start with you, Nirvana, maybe.
Yeah, awesome. So I have worked through at the moment the cheetah management module, as well as the Rhino module part 1. Honestly, both of the courses have been so fascinating. I think learning this kind of information from someone who's in the industry and someone who's able to pass on that knowledge is just so valuable. Knowing how much of it has come through trial and error. There's almost sort of no excuse for the next generation of wildlife veterinarians not to take advantage of that material that's there, so that we can learn from that and implement that in potentially when we go out and practice. So all I would say to students, if you're watching, if you are genuinely, you want to head out to Africa, to South Africa, anywhere in Africa, and work with wildlife, then watch these courses, because there's so much to learn from them.
Oh, fantastic. How about you, Yashu?
Yeah, just like Nirvana, I'm like done with the cheetah course and half of the rhino course. And as a second year, I personally found it really helpful that like Dr. Rogers doesn't kind of hit you with like the big complicated jargon. So like the format is really easily deliverable, where I think even if I was a first year, with a little bit of research, I'd be able to understand the course, and it kind of really builds on what you learn at uni. So it's almost like he's kind of helping us with like that basic wildlife vet knowledge that he got through I don't even know how many years of like expertise. And you know, he's always telling us those stories. He even includes like stories in the course about how he had to fail and like try again, and like, you know, makes, like Nirvana was saying, the trial and error thing. So I love that he includes little anecdotes, and I don't know, I feel like it's a really accessible course. So no matter what stage of like vet med you're in, I feel like it would be helpful to you. So yeah.
Fantastic. No, I love that feedback. How about you, Molly?
I haven't really got anything to add. I have to agree with both the girls, really, that I think the structure and like it's so clearly explained and how you go through everything, it makes it so easy to just kind of just flow through everything really nicely. And also, like you said, with the anecdotes and things like that, it's just so inspirational to like for us, especially like you said, with like making mistakes and failure, because I think especially with such high achievers that most vet students are and have to be to get where we are, you kind of forget that actually failure sometimes is okay and it's not always your fault, and you just learn so much from it. So I think that's a really good message to take home as well.
100%. I mean, like, obviously I'm not a vet, but then like, so the amount I'm learning is just amazing. And just what you're saying about it being so clearly explained and everything, like I'm able to follow it, which I'm really impressed that I'm managing to do, and it's so good. And I must say, like, so far the second Rhino module, which a lot of you obviously wouldn't have got to yet, is my favorite by far so far. It's just like absolutely blows me away with some of the stuff I've seen. So it's amazing. So we're going to show a little Rhino module preview now, and then when that's done, we're going to be joined by Peter. So yeah, let's get stuck in.
We were called out to a white rhino bull in the Greater Kruger. It had a huge wound on the left side of its body and was really limping badly. We darted it from the helicopter. I used a low dose because I wasn't sure as to the severity of the wound, and it took a long time to react. And then when he did react, he didn't go down. So we had to approach him carefully. I didn't want to dart him again. So I approached him with a blindfold, and he didn't react too kindly to that. He turned around and sort of mock charged me, but I think he was too sore to do anything.
So there we go. That's all about the rhinos. Peter, good evening. Thank you so much again for joining us. How are you today?
No, good. Thanks, Roger. Fine, thanks. And all the ladies, how are the ladies doing? Nirvana, Yashaswini, Molly, you got your girls all good?
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're streaming live, as you know, to University of Nottingham, to University of Edinburgh, and also Royal Veterinary College in London. And everyone's very keen to share some of their thoughts and excitement for the couple of modules that they've done so far, and absolutely loving it. So we've just been catching up about what Nirvana, Yashu, and Molly have been sort of experiencing so far, and how much they've enjoyed your stuff so far, Peter. Would you say it's been a fun experience for you as well, doing these courses?
Listen, I've loved it. You know, as I said to you when I spoke to you earlier, I'm still in the bush here at the moment. I'm not even back in my office. So I'm treating a little lion that was injured in a fight. So I've got her on a drip, so I'm just monitoring it. So the fact that I could do it from here in the middle of nowhere just makes it a lot easier for all of us. I've loved it. You know, the thing is, you know, this is my first time doing it. I've done a lot of live lectures and it's easy, but you know, when you're talking to a screen, it makes it a lot more different and a lot more difficult. So I think if you ladies and Roger, if you've got any suggestions as to how we can improve, you know, you must please let me know, because this is the first time I'm doing it. So, but I really love it, you know, and if you don't stop me talking, I'll be here still tomorrow morning.
we were just saying actually now, just saying to the audience and everyone watching, is that we're all learning so much through this process, and all actually I'm loving it. I know Nirvana, Yashi, and Molly are really enjoying sort of testing it out for us, and then as we release it to all their members and everything, which is amazing, and we're learning so much as we go, and yeah, I'm just keep getting blown away by each lesson as it comes through by you, Peter, and I'm really just so in awe of everything you do, and it just goes to show that you're now live on site and still so keen to speak to the students, even though you've got caring for a line in the background.
Yeah, shame. Yeah, no, it's just so nice to be able to work with people. When, as I said, I think to you the other day, maybe on a phone call, that I didn't. I'm trying to be modest about it. I didn't realize how much I knew, compared to what you people knew until I start sharing it. Then I realized what I take for granted, or as easy, you guys know nothing about it. So it's so nice to share the experiences, because once you treat a rhino and it's gone, then you're ready for the next one. Nobody's learned anything from it. So the fact that we can go online and share these experiences with you people, it just makes it such a pleasure, and that's why I'm excited and inspired for every one of these conversations there.
Brilliant. So we got a few new sort of people in the audience joining this time that didn't manage to join last time. So would you be able to just give us a quick summary again of your background and your sort of experience and where you're based in South Africa?
Okay. Yeah. When I was about 20 years old, I'd spent 2 years in the army. And my dad said, he's sick and tired of paying for my holidays during university times. I must get a holiday job. And I was very fortunate in the fact that my stepmother used to work in the Kruger National Park, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. And she said, okay, well, she knows the vet in the Kruger Park, and she put me into contact with him. And I was very fortunate to land a holiday job with him during that time. So over the years, that's how my passion grew for wildlife. And I was very fortunate when I qualified to get a job with the then Natal Parks Board. If people won't know it, but it's Umfolozi Game Reserve, Shislui Game Reserve in KwaZulu-Natal. That's the sort of home of the white rhino. That's where the white rhino was pretty much extinct throughout Southern Africa. And there were literally only a handful left in what is now known as the Umfolozi Game Reserve. And due to their conservation efforts, the animals are now standing at about 3,000, and they've managed to populate the rest of South Africa again, and then Zimbabwe and Botswana. Unfortunately, they're having this hell of a poaching problem at the moment, but that's for another day. And then while I was working there, I got approached by the Hoedspruit Endangered Species Center. That's where you guys saw all the slides from the previous presentation. They were having problems with neonatal mortalities in cheetah cubs. So when I went for my interview, I said to them, the first thing I must tell you is that I don't even know what a cheetah looks like. I've been working on rhinos for how many years, and what I really told them was that I didn't know much about them. And anyway, I was fortunate enough to get the job, I think maybe because I was honest, and I was actually dressed much smarter than the guy who was doing the interview, and he was very impressed. So I learned on my feet there, and I was there for 7 years, and during that time I developed my own private practice. So I left them in 2001, but I still do all their work. So I've been associated with them, the Hoedspruit Endangered Species Center, which is mainly the cheetahs, for about 25 years or so. Our new sort of area of a new challenge now is, and this is hopefully going to be on next week, is the pangolins. I don't know, should I carry on talking or must I stop?
No. I mean, always. That's why we're here. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So the last time when Nirvana and Yashi and Molly were on this call, they walked in with a pangolin that had just been confiscated in a sting. And our area, our practice has been recognized as the practice with the enough sort of experience and equipment and expertise to handle these pangolins that come in, because one must bear in mind they are smuggled through. A lot of them are smuggled through from Zimbabwe, and you guys, I'm sure, all know the so-called medicinal properties of pangolins as well as rhino horn. So a lot of these animals get smuggled out through the ports to the east, and they're used for medicinal purposes. So often when we get them, and you can't see from the exterior, is that they are in much worse condition than what they really are. in the past we used to get them, and we didn't realize that they'd perhaps been in the back seat of a car or the boot of a car for 2 weeks, or in a bucket for 2 weeks. And these people, the poachers, don't know what to feed them. So they feed them mealie meal and potatoes. We found all sorts of things, even meat and mealies and all sorts of things, that the guys have tried to feed them. And this is all the while trying to find a market to get rid of this pangolin. So when in the beginning, when we used to get them in, we used to release them and think, oh, fantastic, release them in a safe area. And I can tell you now, in hindsight, that probably 95% of them died. Because as soon as we started, getting a bit of expertise and taking blood and x-rays and assessing for dehydration, we found that these animals were in really, really, really poor condition. Generally speaking, very dehydrated, as I say, sometimes, without water and that for 2 weeks. And releasing them in that sort of state, it's just a one-way ticket. So it's a very, very intensive process now to rehab them. We actually worked it out the other day. It's in the region of about 60,000 rand, which is how many thousands of pounds is that? 2 million pounds? I don't know. No, but our money's worth nothing. But anyway, you can work it out. It's about 20. It's about 3,000 pounds at least, but more, 4,000 pounds to get them up and going again. In the beginning, that cost us about 1,000 rand a day. So I've gone out from the viewpoint that 300,000. How much?
3,000 pounds.
Okay, I got from the viewpoint that about 300,000 pangolins are poached annually. So if we try and save one pangolin, you're not saving the species. So you've got to say to yourself, okay, we're spending this 60,000 rand. It's a lot of money. Initially it costs us about 1,000 rand a day. We're spending this amount of money. We've got to get as much benefit out of it while this animal is with us. And to me, the big thing is it's very important to save that pangolin, but more important is to use this animal as to actually educate the surrounding communities, particularly the communities that surround the parks. Because, most people, I've been in the game industry for 35 years, and I think I've seen a pangolin once or twice in the wild. So even people who work with them don't see them because they're mainly nocturnal. So, most people don't have a chance at all. They don't even know what a pangolin is. So what we do is they're very, very stress susceptible, but we have to feed in the beginning when they come in because they're so dehydrated. We've got them on drips, and that's interesting in itself to see where we put the drip in. And then we've got to feed them twice a day. So all of this has got to be done under anesthetic. It just makes the animal more manageable. And the big thing is it reduces the stress. So while the animal is sleeping, I get the local schools to come in, 5-10 pupils at a time, and they can actually watch these animals while they are being treated under anesthetic. And it's no stress, no additional stress on the pangolin whatsoever. And to me, to be quite honest, that's actually more important than saving one individual pangolin, is the educational prospects and teaching these kids, that this is what a pangolin looks like, that the medicinal purposes are not there. It's probably a fallacy. And, these little kids, they're the future. I'm checking out probably in a few years' time, but the young kids are our future, and it's up to them to try and preserve nature, and particularly endangered species like the pangolin. So we put a lot of work into them, and to me, the biggest thing now, and I'm really emphasizing that, I've just got another 2 pangolins in on Friday, so we're using every opportunity to educate the local school kids and anybody, for that matter, who's interested.
So for those of you who missed the last live stream we did with Peter a few weeks ago, we were very lucky enough and completely randomly enough that we got to see a pangolin live that got brought in just as it got brought to Peter's vet practice. So go back and check that out if you haven't watched that. But I guess the big question, Peter, is how is Lily the pangolin doing? Okay,
it's interesting. They've got such different personalities, and I know I've told you that before, but Lily was a runner from the beginning. She just ran and she didn't want to listen. So we actually transferred her to another facility in a very quiet area where there's a lot more ants and the people have got a lot more time and on their hands. And we actually got a picture of her today and feedback. She's not far from us, but she's doing amazingly well. But now we've just got another runner that's coming. One that eats well, another runner. So it's a lot of, and I promise you, there's so much pressure on. Well, my colleague Debbie does most of the pangolin work, and she's young and she's keen and she doesn't want to let anybody down. But every time the one comes in, I say to her, listen, Debbie, my dear, listen to me. If this pangolin doesn't make it, you must realize it's coming in a poor condition. Don't take it personally, because everybody's eyes are on you, from the whole country and a lot, all over the world. And one mustn't take it personally. You must realize that there's only so much you can do, and you can only do your best. So, it's because she is inclined, being young and trying to, do everything right, inclined to take it a bit personally. But I just said to her, don't take it personally. Just do your best, because they're all different. There's no artificial diet for them. With every other species, there's got artificial milk, or you can give them alfalfa or lucerne or hay or cubes or some sort of a meal. The pangolins, they have to walk. They have to walk, and they've got to find ants. So firstly, you can have all the best medical skills in the world, but if you don't have ants for the pangolins to eat, you've got a big problem. So today, my son and one of the nurses, they walked for 4 hours with the pangolins, these two new ones. They woke up in the middle of the day, which is a bit strange, but we thought, well, instead of waking them up, and tonight if they want to sleep, they must sleep. And they took them walking today. And as I say, the one was a runner, the other one was eating well. But they've just got to settle down. And all the time, while they're not eating, they're burning up a lot of carbs. They're burning up, their metabolism, is burning up. They're losing weight. So it puts a lot of pressure on somebody like Debbie. There's a lot of things that are out of your hands. If the pangolin doesn't want to eat, well, it doesn't want to eat. That's why we tube them with all these commercial preparations. A lot of this Royal Canin stuff. The Oralade and the recovery fluid and all that sort of stuff. But they can't live like that. You can't carry on tubing them, twice a day forever. So at some stage they have to eat. And that's where the patients come in. Now, Lily only started eating well about 4 days ago. So for 10 days, they were battling with her, and Debbie was going up to where they were and tubing her, and every tubing is an anesthetic. And anyway, she's eating now. And so what we do is we weigh them before they go out. And you weigh them when they come back, and then you can see, whether they've actually taken enough food in. Because most of the times in the beginning, they come back and they weigh less than when they went out. So then you start panicking, so it's not easy, to rear a little lion cub or a cheetah cub or whatever. Or elephant's very difficult. A rhino is easy, but a pangolin, to look after a pangolin, it's got to find its own food, and that's difficult. That's very difficult.
I think that advice that you gave, correct me if I'm wrong, out to all the, the vet students out there, but like to not take things personally is probably such a good bit of advice, because, you guys are all getting into this because you're obviously passionate about it, and it's probably very easy to take every single patient personally, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I can just butt in there quickly. I think, when you're young, like you girls are, and when you come out, you don't have that confidence, not yet. You don't have the experience behind you. So when things go wrong, you think it's your fault, and it's human nature. But most of the time it isn't. Things do go wrong, and it's how you react to it. And at the end of the day, if I can give you a message, is that you can only do your best. If you've done your best and something doesn't work out the way you plan it, well, then there's no more you can do. And that's all. It's easy for me to say it, but I've been through that situation many, many times. And with years and experience, it becomes less of a problem, because you've done 1,000 rhinos before, and none of them have died. But yeah, one's died. If it's your first one, and you just come out of college, you think, geez, what's wrong with me? But things happen. So
such good life advice, not just vet advice, actually. Yeah. That's brilliant. Okay, so just a reminder to everyone out there, send in your questions with regards to the cheetah module, the rhino module, or being a wildlife vet in general. If you've got any questions that you want the panel to ask, you want Peter to ask, that'd be great. You can send in your questions. And while we're waiting for those to come through, probably best let's kick off with the panel and see if you guys have got any questions about some of your recent discoveries and the lessons that have been going on. And yeah, let's get started with some questions to get stuck in. Just a reminder from the cheetah course that's gone through. So we covered last time, obviously, we spoke about the cheetah management module that I was doing. And within that module, we had neonatal mortalities, anesthetics, cheetah relocations, darting systems, DNA testing, vaccination programs, diseases and treatments, internal and external parasites, control antibiotics, and orphan rearing. So like a fantastic module. And really the people that have gone through it already have said how helpful it's been. And then moving on to the Rhino module, which is broken up into two different modules, so part 1 and part 2. And the one that most people have gone through so far has been covering things like mobilization, mobilization equipment, procedures, which includes the drugs and the treatments, ointments, wound treatment, microchipping, ear notching, DNA and genetic sampling, blood, tissue and hair testing, a little bit about rhino horn and transmitters and collars. So that's all just in part 1 alone. And then in part 2, which we'll get to in a minute, but just incredible so far. So Nirvana, shall we start with you? Have you got any questions about either going back to the cheetah module or the Rhino module?
Yeah, so I've got a question about the first Rhino module, just worked through. So obviously in that module's going to talk about dehorning, and I just wondered, who is it that I suppose takes ownership or stores these horns from these rhino, and are they burnt in a similar way to ivory, or are they just stored?
Yeah, the thing is, bearing in mind that rhino horn, pound for pound, is the single most valuable commodity on this earth. When you've got this, the wolves have got ears. Once you start dehorning, everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very important that the horns do not stay long on that property, because if you keep them on the property and you put them in a safe or something, you automatically become a target, and it's going to happen. So what we often do have is we've got a security company with us, heavily armed, and we put all the horns, they're all microchipped, they're weighed, identified, put them into a big sort of a container, and it's driven straight away up to Johannesburg or flown with a helicopter up to Joburg or Pretoria and put into these big vaults. Mm-hmm. Now, to burn them, that's another debate, on its own. Is a lot of the guys want to be able to legalize the sale in rhino horn. Bearing in mind that the anti-poaching efforts are extremely, extremely expensive. And to the point that these days, people don't want rhinos because what's happening with the signal here? No. Because it's still, the signals are so, the security costs so much that the man in the street cannot afford it. But if he could actually sell that rhino horn and plow those costs, the proceeds back into conserving his rhino. So that's what most people are doing, is they're keeping these horns in these big vaults and hoping that the legal trade in rhino horn will take place sooner rather than later. But that's a big debate for another day. I've got my own views on that, but that's the reason they don't burn it, and they don't burn ivory anymore either. That was a once-off for show in Kenya that impressed everybody. But that was the end. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. How about Yashi? You got a first question that you want to ask Peter?
Yeah, I actually have one from RVC. A student sent this in, and it's, why do you? Okay, so hold on. This has a lot of big words in it. Okay, so in the course it says that if you supplement with oxygen, without giving butorphanol, it increases hypoxia, and the question is just why?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that.
Sorry.
I've asked, the work was done by a guy called Professor Leith Mayer from the Faculty of Veterinary Science, and he did it with some Swedish scientists, and he's explained it to me probably 5 times or 6 times. Every time I understand it, but then I forget. So but I will find out. I'll find out prior to our next meeting, and I'll let you know again if I can remember that far.
I have another one instead.
Okay, that's much better. Let's try this one.
Okay, sorry, don't shoot the messenger. The next one that I got from the same person is, why are pins and needles so harmful for rhinos? Like, why can't they just shake it off like humans do?
Okay, thing is, if you got like pins and needles, you can stand up on one leg. You might not be able to use that particular leg, or if if you do stand up, you can hang on to something, but you must remember now that there's like 2 tons lying on that leg, so the circulation is cut off completely. They call it like compartment syndrome. But unfortunately, I've seen it. There's just no ways they can. There's just too much weight to bear. Bearing in mind, they use both back legs to stand up. And if they can't use one, they can't stand up. And they actually literally spin around in circles. It's horrible to see. So again, as I said, with wildlife, prevention is always better than cure. You've got to think ahead and think again and prevent those problems before they even occur.
Good question. How about you, Molly? You got anything?
We don't have any questions from Nottingham. I had a question it's not about the courses, it's about pangolins. And so you said that they're really stress susceptible. So you advise them whenever you do things and stuff like that. Is there, or have you come across yet, like a problem with anesthetizing that much? Like, do you do it multiple times a day, obviously, because you have to feed them so much?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, touch wood, we've been very lucky. We use isoflurane, which is very, very safe, as you know. And I don't want to tempt fate, but my ladies, who work with them are really good. And they know all the warning signs, and they are excellent, and they seem to be very tolerant to it. I don't say tolerant, but they are tolerant to the anesthetic in the sense that they don't, we don't have sort of anesthetic emergencies with them.
Yeah.
Maybe if I was working on it, could happen, but my ladies are very, very good. I told you, it's much better than guy vets.
So you just use isoflurane. Do you do pre-med or anything like that, or?
No, isoflurane and quite a high flow rate of oxygen.
Okay, fun.
Yeah.
So I've got a question about.
I think about 2% isoflurane to start off with, just to induce them. And then sometimes even they just put some cotton wool soaked in isoflurane into the container with them. And just when they become manageable, then we can work on them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So something I was fascinated about in the first Rhino module was the whole recumbency thing. And one of the first things that you've got to do is obviously get them into the right position. How easy is that to actually get them to move them from into the right recumbency position that you need to?
Yeah, it's usually, obviously, the bigger the animal, the more difficult it is, like a big bull. But then also on top of that, some of the we've always got people to help us. Always. We've always got about probably 8 people, besides my teams, 6 or 8 people just like for labor. And you've got most momentum or on the what I call it, most leverage on the neck. And even on the front horn, the further back you go, the less successful, the less meaningful it is trying to push it onto its chest. So you've got all the strong guys or strong ladies in the front, on that front horn and on the neck and on the shoulder. From there backwards, you're actually almost wasting your time. But then some of these anesthetics, as I said to you, some of the rhinos' feet or the legs are very stiff, and it's difficult to get them to fold in at the animal. Then it can be difficult. Then we give, as I mentioned, we sometimes give that midazolam or the dormicum. We give it intravenously, or a bit more azaparone intravenously. But we always eventually get them onto their chest. Sometimes much more difficult than others, though.
Yeah. Okay. So if you allow us for a second, we're just going to pop back to a cheetah question that's just come in, and then we can go back to the panel for some more questions and then move back onto the rhinos. But Lauren has popped us a question, just going back to the cheetahs, saying, how do you go about administering the lime sulfur dip against, and I'm not going to try to say that word, for cheetahs? There we go. What they said.
This is for this is obviously for captive cheetahs. The way we do this is they've got like a little feeding area, and then they run through we call it a capture cage, if you like, not a squeeze chute, but like a smaller cage, which has got drop doors on either side. So they have to run through that every day to get their food. So they're used to running through this. So what you do is, as they run through, you just close those 2 drop doors, and you catch them in there in a closed area, and then we just spray them like with a normal garden spray. You wet them completely, and they don't really mind it. I think the person who's administering it minds it more because of the smell of the lime sulfur. It's terrible. It's like rotten eggs, and And you do that once a week. Obviously, in winter, you cannot do that because of the cold. And a cheetah is a very, very slightly built animal anyway, so it doesn't have that much resistance to cold, I don't think. So in the summer months is the time you do it, and you do it once or twice a week, probably for about 6 weeks. And that usually takes care of it. More recently, we've been using microcidal, Grisia fulvin, and even more now, we've been using itraconazole and ketoconazole, which work, but they're very, very expensive and they work well. And if they've got a lot, but the problem is if you've got a lot of cheetahs in one enclosure, you can't regulate the dosage. One might get double dosage, and they are toxic, as you all know. So there's different strokes for different folks. If it's on an individual basis, that Grisia fulvin works well. It is more liver toxic than the newer ones, the itraconazole and ketoconazole. So yeah, there's probably more sophisticated ways of doing it, but obviously the lime sulfur in summer is fine, and if you've got a lot of cheetahs to do that way, it works very, very well. But you've got to literally drench the animal.
Cool. Okay, thank you, and thank you, Lauren, for the question. So to everyone, obviously, keep sending your questions through. We're gonna stay online for about another sort of 25 minutes or so, and get some questions in. But going back to rhinos and the Rhino module, Nirvana, have you got anything else that you want to ask specifically about rhinos?
Yeah, so another question on rhinos, forgive me, because I haven't worked through Module 2 yet. I know much of Module 2 is on saving the survivors. But can I ask, is it ever appropriate to transport an animal, let's say, to a BOMA so that regular veterinary care can be provided? Because I know a lot of these cases require really consistent care, let's say, for a bullet wound or a poaching injury and things like that. Is that something that's considered?
Yeah, we do that, but if at all possible, you want to keep the animal in the field. I think I mentioned earlier that particularly the white rhino, they just don't like eating in captivity. And if they're already compromised with a bullet wound, it just compounds the problem. So what we often do is we put a collar, foot collar on, and then we come back every week or so and treat the animal. Putting them into BOMAs is a possibility. It is an option, but it's really a last option, unless the animals, in a lot of these small areas, the animals are supplemented with like lucerne or alfalfa in winter. They're used to eating in captivity, and they're used to people driving around them. They're habituated. In that case, you could put them in a BOMA and treat them that way. But also remember, in a BOMA, there's always with time, there's a bacterial buildup, and there's it might look nice and clean, but it actually isn't. It's probably quite contaminated over the years with rhinos going through. So it's much better from a stress point of view, a nutritional point of view, and a hygiene point of view to treat the animal in its natural environment, particularly when it comes to rhinos, black and white.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you, Peter.
Okay. So speaking about black and white rhinos, I just thought before we moved on to the panel, let's just have a quick look at this footage. Looking at some, I just found this fascinating, actually. There's some black rhino aggression. Let's have a look at this. So fascinating how different, those, the black and the white are really from how they react to coming out of an anesthetic. Yeah,
did that? I don't know. Did it play? Did it play the whole thing?
So that was just a piece. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they are. I mean, the white rhino. I don't know, and I hope nobody will repeat me, but I don't know whether it's a question of IQ. When the white rhino stands up, it's very, very docile, and it's sort of confused, I would imagine, and doesn't know where it is, but it's very sort of controlled. Whereas the black rhino, it's like setting off a bomb. As soon as it realizes it's awake, it just gets up and it runs in any direction at 2 million miles an hour. It's just a totally different recovery, and it tries to kill anything in its path, whether it be a tree or whether they try to kill me once. Nearly succeeded, but yeah, they're totally different recovery. They might look very similar, but in every way they're different. The anesthetic induction, the recovery from the anesthetic, eating in captivity, even though they're so aggressive, they eat within the first 1 or 2 days, and they tame down to the point that you can actually stroke them within about a week, whereas a white rhino never happens.
Yeah. Wow. Sure. Okay. Yashu, any questions from you or any of your members? Any more?
Yeah, we have one on just like general wildlife medicine, which is advice. Like, if you could give one piece of advice on how you got to where you are today, what would it be?
I think I was very lucky. I promise you, and I'm being honestly realistic. I was lucky because there are many people who want this opportunity, and I was lucky to get it. And when I did get it, I grabbed it with both hands. Yeah.
Another bit of life advice in general, I think. Hey.
Yeah, I think so. I was very, very fortunate. Honestly, it was pure luck. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah. We also have another rhino one, if that's okay.
Go for it.
So this is about like antimicrobials. This is my question because we were just covering this in school. So like on farms and stuff, there's a lot of restrictions about what antimicrobials you can use. Have you like seen resistance to any of the antimicrobials you've been using develop in the field yet?
I tell you what, not so much the antimicrobials, but I tell you what, and this is not so applicable to rhinos, is that you get, for example, these guys that do a lot of this intensive breeding with sable antelope and buffalo and roan antelope. Things like roan and sable are very, very susceptible to your wire worms, hookworms, Hemionchus. And you find that in those sort of captive breeding situations, that you get a definite resistance. Your ivermectins, I think you know ivermectin, Ivermec, that hardly works in this country anymore. But as far as the rhinos are concerned, I don't know, but I think penicillin, even for horses, is, I don't know, that's my personal opinion. But the antibiotics we use are, on one particular farm, it might happen once every year. So it's not as though it's being used all the time. So the chance for resistance to build up is pretty much zero. I would say it's pretty much zero. Good question, though.
Always rely on these three for some good questions, that's for sure. Molly, anything else from you on rhino?
My one really kind of related to Yashi's question about drugs, and it's kind of about licensing. Obviously, there are no drugs licensed for the wildlife, really. But so say for like a cheetah, would you choose a drug that was licensed in a cat or something similar to that with the rhino? Is that how you go about choosing the drugs that you use?
Yeah, look, as I say, we were lucky. The experimental stages with the rhinos were in the early 60s. And, as I mentioned, they're so susceptible to the drugs that we use, any drugs for that matter. So they lost a lot of rhinos along the way, trying to perfect the technique. But now with the cheetahs, we've done a lot of sort of more in the last I'd say the last 10, 15 years, based on, as you say, on the cheetah stuff. We used to use, when I first started working with the cheetahs, we used an intravenous drug called Safan, which was used for, I think it's off the market now, I don't know, Safan. It was, I'm trying to think what sort of anesthetic it was, but it was absolutely beautiful. It had to be given intravenously, but working with captive cheetahs, that was quite easy. And so that was a cat drug. Now we use midatomidine and ketamine a lot. That's what you use in cats. It's very, very, very good anesthetic. More recently, we've been using a drug I mentioned it called BAM, which you can use in domestic cats, but we aren't using it because it's very, very expensive. But when you're working with endangered species like this, the cost is nothing. Even Xylitol, you guys might know Xylitol or Tilazol. In fact, I was using it on this little line I've been working on. It's beautiful in the sense that it's, again, you can use it for cats and dogs, but it's very, very expensive. But when you're working with animals like we work with, cost is no issue. But The safety margin, again, with Zolitol are absolutely brilliant. So yeah, getting back to your original question, we base a lot of the anesthetics these days on normal cat anesthetics.
Okay,
Cool.
And the wild dogs, the wild dogs are the same as domestic dogs.
yeah, it's
A
the
lot.
closest relative, really. Kind of look at
Yeah, very, very similar. As you say, most of the stuff is off-label,
Yeah.
antibiotics as well, but the rhinos are extrapolate very much to horses, horse, not so much horse anesthesia, but horse medication, antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, that sort of thing.
a bit mental though, anyways. I
you
wouldn't
say
want
again?
to buy a horse.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah, look, horses, I'll tell you that, they always say one thing about horses, and not only horses, they say you must never trust anything that eats while you sleep. Remember that, horses love dying, eh? They love dying.
big.
They're the most useless things on earth. But anyway, that's another story.
Honestly.
Oh, they're useless.
Yeah.
So we've got another question coming in from Lauren. She's always actually sending in some really good questions. Sorry for covering up your face there, Peter, with the question. But she says, sorry for another cheetah question over rhinos, but what's the success rate in releasing hand-reared individuals compared to those raised by the mother or those brought in as adults? And do you ever put cubs into surrogate mothers?
Any cheetahs that are born in captivity, whether they be hand raised or whether they are mother raised, they firstly they taught to hunt by their mothers, and there's a lot of trial and error. Secondly, they are fit. The wild ones, they're very fit as compared to the ones in captivity. And you'll notice it if you look at the ones in captivity, they always look a little bit bony. It's because people say, but your cheetahs are thin. It's not that. It's because they don't exercise a hell of a lot. That the hind quarter, the muscle development isn't as prominent. So we just got two in. We released onto a farm last week. They call it a camp. It's 2,000 hectares. It's bigger than most farms you guys have got. But what we do is we put a collar on them, a radio tracking collar. You have to do that. It's negligent if you don't. And then you monitor them every single day. Because, even though they do have prey there, they've got to get fit. They've got to hone their hunting skills. Sometimes they can get injured because they take on the wrong species. And then you supplement them. If you see they're getting a bit skinny and they haven't killed, you give them an impala or something and you let them eat, and then you watch them again for the next few days and so on. And usually within a few months, they're hunting on their own. But it's criminal not to put a tracking collar on them and to keep continual and monitor them every single day. So that's no difference really whether they're hand-reared or whether they're mother-reared. What was the other question? It was about...
Let me bring it back again.
Do you surrogate mothers?
Okay. No. Luckily, we very seldom, in captivity, we very seldom have problems with mothers rejecting the cubs. It does happen, especially in the case of mothers having their first litter. But we don't put them onto surrogate mothers. If you put them onto surrogate mothers, they won't take them, unfortunately. They definitely won't. Then the only option is to hand rear them. And that's not all that difficult. It's actually quite easy. Touch wood. Yeah.
Okay. So before we move on to, I don't know if you guys, before I do move on, have you guys got any more rhino-related questions before I move on to anything else? No? All good? Okay,
well, I'll have one for next time about John Hume, Peter.
No, go for it, Nirvana. If you've got another one,
Are you sure? It could be potentially a long one. Okay.
No, go
well, I suppose following on from the first question I had about horn, I'm really fascinated by people like John Hume, Peter, you're probably familiar, who are literally farming horn and advocating to end this ban on the international trade. From what I understand, his aim is to flood the market and literally price poachers out of their trade by selling his bloodless horns, as he calls them. Personally, I struggle with it ethically, but I think surely this can't be the catch-all solution to this poaching problem. But I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, on this topic.
Yeah, look, as you say, it's a very contentious topic, and all I want to say is that before I express my opinions, I think we're all entitled to our opinions. Whether you agree with me or not, that's fine. But you must also understand that I'm entitled to my opinion as well. And people are so quick to jump on the bandwagon and say, "Yo, you this and you're a bad guy and you're a terrible guy." And likewise, it's the same with you. You guys are also entitled to your opinion. But my John Hume, I actually know him. I know his vet very, very well. He's now got about, I'm trying to think how many rhinos. He's got like 2,000 rhinos, which is a hell of a lot. It's costing him millions every month. Okay, they are captive. Well, they're in big camps, He's independently wealthy. He started, if I remember correctly, RCI International, one of the biggest timeshare businesses in the world. And the rhinos have become his passion. So I don't think he's financially motivated by it. And the idea was to legalize the trade in rhino horn, and to save the species itself. But yes, I can't comment exactly on, because I don't know the entire background to it. But certainly, if he was, his main mission is to preserve the rhino and breed them in captivity, so that they can be, ultimately. Well, he's just sold 19 black rhinos to Swaziland, to get money again, because there were only a couple of black rhinos there. So that's a success story on its own. But my personal opinion, I don't know, you want my personal opinion on rhino horn legalization?
I would love to. If you feel comfortable commenting, that would be, it'd be really, really good.
Okay. It's probably against what most people say. I'm very, very for it. Places like, for example, you can take any place, even the Kruger National Park. But the rhino horn, most rhinos in this country, more than half of them, and when I say in this country, it turns out to be in the whole of Africa anyway, in the whole of the world, are in private hands. So now you've got to say to yourself, let's say you've got a white rhino cow that's worth, I don't know, let's call it, what would it be? 3,000 or 4,000 pounds, 5,000 pounds. Would you put that on your farm? It's more than 5,000, it's probably 20,000 pounds. Would you put it on your farm, that animal, and everybody knows it's there? It's like, okay, let's call it 300,000 or 400,000 rand. It's like going to the bank and taking 300,000 or 400,000 rand in cash and putting it in a bag, and you put it under a tree on your farm and you leave it. And you tell everybody there's 300,000 or 400,000 rand there. Don't touch it. What's going to happen? Would you do that? I mean, you've got to be crazy to do that. So why would you want a rhino? You're going to invest 400,000 rand in a rhino. You're going to put it on your farm. Everybody knows then it's going to get poached. So why would you want a rhino? So the demand for rhinos is going down. So areas where millions of hectares where rhinos were formerly conserved and breeding have now been, people don't want them. They're selling their rhinos. You can hardly give them away these days because there's intrinsically no value. A rhino is more valuable dead than alive. Bottom line. You've got to turn that around. You've got to make that animal worth more alive than dead. So got to be, and people make money out of cattle, they make money out of horses, they make money out of sheep. Why can't you make money out of a rhino? Is there something wrong with that? And besides sheep's wool, it's one of the only sustainable utilizations where you don't have to kill the animal. Okay, so now that farmer, if he could sell that rhino horn, okay, he can make money out of it. What's wrong with that? But if he can take that money as well and he can plow it into jacking up his security, paying his security people more, getting more security people in, even sharing the proceeds with the local communities. Because if you don't involve your local communities, you're not going to shape anyway. You've got to involve the local people. Otherwise, I say, why must we look after these rhinos if we're not getting any benefit from it? And believe me, that's very, very, very important. So yeah, I'm very much for the legal trade of rhino horn for those reasons only. The people say, how are you going to control it? I say, well, look, that's not my problem. All I'm telling you is, you guys must control it. Get somebody who's an expert. But as far as the principle is concerned, I don't have any problem with it at all. I really, really don't. And a lot of people say a rhino without a horn is not a rhino. It's funny. Next week I'm dehorning 30 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I've got another 6 and then another 10. I'm doing about 60 dehornings in the next sort of 2 weeks, And the reason is not to harvest the horn. The reason is to stop the poaching. And the dehorning works unbelievably. But not dehorning on its own, as a silver bullet, to dehorning in conjunction with good security. The two together, the one without the other doesn't work. And it's amazing, funny enough, I'm probably digressing a little bit, is that how used to I've got to seeing rhinos without horns, that when I see a rhino without a horn, it looks strange. And people say, a rhino without a horn is not a rhino. Well, I beg to differ. I'd rather see a rhino without a horn than no rhino at all. So to me, that's a no-brainer. That issue, the rhino horn, the utilization. They're saying in education, you must stop the people using the horn. I mean, they use it as aphrodisiacs, anti-cancer drugs, antipyretics. I just think it's a tradition that's it's older than Christianity. In our short lifetime, how are we going to educate those people not to use this stuff? The rhinos are going to be long gone. So if you can't beat them, why don't you join them? So I just think there's a middle path, definitely. Otherwise, we're going to lose all the rhinos. That I can promise you. Because the man in the street, more than half the rhinos in this country are owned by people like you and me. Would you want one? I wouldn't want one if you gave it to me. So the only thing that's going to change that, education in, 1,000 years' time maybe, but in the short term, while we've still got rhinos, the best way to do it is to sell that horn. My opinion only.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. It's fascinating to have the perspectives. Honestly, I think it's so important to have perspectives and not sit, in the UK and, wave our fists and say, save the rhino, when you don't know the intricate details of actually what's going on the ground. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
And that's another thing quickly while we're talking about it. When the problem is also what happens with this poaching is you get donor apathy. I think you know about the people hear about rhino poaching all the time, and when it becomes top of the hit parade, everybody that donates and donates and donates. So in the beginning in this country, and this is how corrupt it gets, there was about 40 NGOs collecting money and selling bracelets and trinkets, and 10% goes to rhino anti-poaching. All a lot of rubbish, eh? They were all big scams. So and then eventually people say, listen, we're not going to donate anymore. So when people say to me, I've got X amount to donate to an anti-poaching thing, to rhino anti-poaching, I say, don't give money. Identify a project. Do they need night sights? Do they need no uniform? Do they need sleeping bags? And in that way, where that money is going to. Because a lot of people just donate online and you don't know where that money ends up. Some people do ask me, and I'm involved in certain programs and certain NGOs like Rhino Revolution in the UK. Well, they come from the UK. I know where that money is going to. But, if just to give it into when you go to a shopping center or you go to a grocery store and you get in a till to where you're going to pay in the queue and you see there's a little container full of little bracelets that say, save the rhino, save the rhino. You buy one of these bracelets for £1 or £2, you don't know where that money's going. You've got no idea. So the best is to identify, especially if you're going to give a lot of money, identify specific projects or speak to somebody like me or who's involved directly, with these things. But just to give it, donate, press a button on the TV screen and donate it. I don't know. It's not the right thing to do.
No, definitely. I agree. And I think like one of the things that I've been so passionate about through the years is starting to sort of curb this feeling about people always having a tendency to start up their own charities, own again, and reinventing the wheel all the time and everything like that. And one of the things I've been so passionate about is having that collaborative aspect. How can you make the projects that are in existence better, and how can you get them to connect better, and how can you get that aspect to grow, rather than just feeling like everyone wants to start up their own charity, and the best interests are so often there, but it ends up actually backfiring in a way. And I've seen it in the UK. There's 164,000 registered charities in the UK alone, and it ends up saturating the market a lot, and it sometimes does more harm than good. And I've been in the charity industry and the social enterprise industry now for like 15 years, and so what you're saying, Peter, makes like so much sense. And that research aspect and finding out exactly what's happening, is so important. And I think the social enterprise model is a new wave of how charities should start looking, rather than the Victorian model, which is, charities set up in the way that they always have been. And the social enterprise model is things like these courses that we're doing, which is, it's educating, it's starting to inject money back into the system that's going to start to support these kind of projects and stuff like this, rather than it just be, donating randomly and stuff like that, as you say. So it makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we're going to, let me just see, there are a couple of questions coming in. We've got a general one, if that's okay, from Melly. She says, she's just joined, would really like to know what's the best way of getting into the wildlife profession. So very general question, but we did cover it a little bit last time. But I don't know if you want to tell Melly a little bit more about generally how to get into wildlife profession.
I think at university, you don't learn a hell of a lot about wildlife. So I think, when you, I suppose where you guys are in the UK, the best is to sort of try and maybe during your vacation jobs and your practicals, go and work at these zoos, or safari parks, and sort of, get yourself out there, get your name known, and it's quite a small field, as compared to domestic animals, even horses and dogs and that. It's much smaller. So there's a lot of luck involved. But what you can also do is you can do postgraduate studies, like a master's. I think there's one at one of your universities, which is a really good one. A master's in is it conservation biology or conservation, something like that.
Edinburgh does, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so I think, if you do your postgraduate, or there's like a postgraduate degree out here, your master's in wildlife veterinary science, it doesn't make you able to catch a rhino straight away, because that's practical, but it gets you into the field, and gets you into the right field. So it's not going to happen immediately, but I think if you just keep knocking at the door and working at these safari parks and zoos in your country and making acquaintances, and people can point you in other directions. We've got, in this country, I can think of offhand, probably 5 or 6 lady wildlife vets who are excellent. And they came out, I don't know whether they were chasing guys or what, but anyway, they came out here and they started off working in these wildlife clinics, in these different... They were working in these sort of remote areas where the senior partner would be a wildlife vet. When this lady was off, she'd go out with a vet, and sort of make herself eventually like indispensable. So yeah, come out to Africa, and work in. There's always room for vets. There's quite a great shortage of vets in this country, especially in the rural areas. And that's how a lot of these girls have done it, by actually working in conjunction with a wildlife vet, working in his practice, doing the small animals, but in time of accompanying him and learning. I've done it with quite a few vets so far.
Cool, thank you. And thanks so much for the question, Melly. So Melissa's asking a follow-up question from the topic that we've just been discussing, actually. So we've gone off rhinos now. We're now moving on to some other stuff, which is great. So under your recommendation, what organizations should we focus our funds to instead? Well,
okay. I think what you must do there, because it's such a broad field, is identify the species, perhaps. What you want to support. Rhino conservation, or pangolins, or cheetahs, or because there are many organizations. I know a lot of them, but like the rhino ones I can tell you about. I can tell you about the pangolin ones, certainly, but it differs from species to species, and I can only tell you about the species that I'm involved in. But yeah, I think just again, you can just get my email address, and if you can tell me what species you're keen on, or if you don't care what they use it for. The thing is also, a lot of these NGOs specialize in specific fields. Like one would do pangolins, one would do rhinos. I'm just off the top of my head. The rhinos is a big one at the moment, and the pangolins are becoming more and more so, because we're finding more out about pangolins. And with social media, we can show the people. Well, you'll see in this pangolin module that's going to come out hopefully next week. We've finished it, Roger, which is good news for you. Except we've still got to do the subtitles and the captions and that, but we've gone through thousands of photographs. I'm just saying it for your benefit. And so December comes, I drink Johnny Walker Black Label. I'm just letting you know. So we spent hours and hours and hours getting it done. So there's more focus on pangolins. You're going to see them on Facebook, on Instagram, or whatever, and on this forum. So people are going to be, more aware of pangolins and want to help with the pangolin conservation. So you can direct it. And if you have any questions and you want to particularly donate to pangolins, I can tell you. If you want to particularly donate to rhinos, I can tell you. But particularly with rhinos, it's nice if you can identify a place which I can show you, and I can put you in contact with them, and you can speak to them directly and say, listen, I've got X amount to spend. What projects have you got? Do you need a new night scopes, or do you need more money for your helicopter? And with the pangolins, you can say, what sort of food they need. Can I sponsor Royal Canin recovery fluid for a year? Or, so try and sponsor specific projects rather than just giving cash. I mean, for the pangolins, it's very small at this stage. I can tell you exactly who to give money to, and I know it'll go to the right place because we are the only people that do the pangolins. So it's very, very limited at this stage of the game. There's nobody else who does the pangolins except us in this area. And then in Johannesburg, there's Johannesburg Wildlife Vet or something. So there's two institutions really that do it. So there's no chance, if you give it to us or to the Johannesburg people, there's no chance that money's going to go astray. But with the rhinos, man, I'm telling you.
There's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got another question coming from Johan. How can we maximize our experience working with wildlife if we are limited in terms of finance?
All right. I think in your, I think we almost answered this question just now. In the UK, I mean, okay, this working physically, I think these courses online are good, but they're not hands-on. But I think the best would be to work again at your safari parks and zoos there. If finance is a problem, they're not going to be able to come out here. The problem also is that if students come out from the UK, we get a lot. I just firstly, and I'm not being horrible. Firstly, they cannot help me. Okay, so that's one thing. They can maybe carry my bags and they can ask questions, but from a game point of view, they cannot help me. Then the clients don't like having extra people along because you're working in the wild, and then one of the students stands up or something, and the rhino runs away, and then I've got to answer. So it puts a lot of pressure on me. So when I do this sort of thing, I do it. The people pay me to do it because it's got to be worth my while to do it. Because to be honest, and I'm not being horrible, students cannot help me at all, not at all, not one iota. So if you pay me to educate you, I will. But that's on the ground. But and I think most vets are that way. If you're working with domestic animals and you come across and you want to work in the clinic, no problem, because there's very little that can go wrong. Something, if there's a sensitive situation, the vet in the consulting room says, this lady's going to put the lock down. Would you mind leaving? With wildlife, there are so many things that can go wrong. So having students with me all the time is a lot of pressure, and my clients are becoming more and more anti it. So I'm actually sitting in a bit of a quandary at the moment. I do, for my alma mater, which is Honest at Put, I do take students, but then it's just one. And it doesn't happen all that time. But I think from your point of view, working in your safari parks and your zoos, that side, just volunteering. I think that's the, otherwise, if you want to work with wildlife on hands, it's going to have to be there. But if you want to learn about it, this sort of scenario that we're working with now, this sort of media, this would be the way to do it, but it's certainly not hands-on at all. It's a difficult one.
Oh, Nirvana and Yashu, but with Nottingham, we have like a list of places in the UK and abroad that we know that take students like for placements, and we share that with our members for NUVs. I don't know if you guys do it as well, but obviously I think it is quite a good idea, because people like Johan, like you said, like you don't know where to go sometimes, or you need or you want someone to say, oh, I've been there, it's really good, or you get some hands-on work experience or something, or they're really nice there, just to have feedback from them. So obviously if you guys don't do that, I think it would be really good if you did. Obviously if you're doing it, fab. But
I think if you're working with animals like, say, at a zoo or a safari park, it's less pressure on the vet because, when we work in the wild, we're working in areas of, 120,000 acres, and you're working with the big five: black rhinos, white rhinos, leopards, buffaloes. Lots of things can go wrong. So there's a lot of pressure on the guys who work in the extensive areas like I do. Zoo vets or, captive breeding areas, much less stress because it's more confined and a lot safer.
Okay, so let's have a little look at the next two modules coming up, just to give you a little bit of a taster. We'll take the last couple of questions and sign off for the night. But so part 2 in the Rhino module. Let's have a look at this. Who would have thought that that's the noise that a baby rhino makes? I'll tell you that. Just to lighten up the mood a little bit, I thought that was necessary. But sure, I mean that's amazing. So coming up in part 2 of the Rhino module, we're going to a bit more detail about dehorning, rhino anatomy, dehorning best practice, and then diving into sort of rhino wounds, so bullet wounds, snare wounds, fight wounds, antibiotics, painkillers, maggot control. And then going into rhino rescue, so rhino survivors, some casts and prosthetics, super interesting. A little bit more detail about the difference between white rhino and black rhino recovery. And then, as you just saw there, the rhino orphans, so rhino calf orphans, the anesthesia around them, transporting them, rhino care, companionship, calf milk supplements, and calf problems. So a jam-packed module as well. That one, I think so far of the 3 out of the cheetah, rhino part 1 and rhino part 2 is definitely my favorite so far. Absolutely incredible, Peter. Really, really, really amazing. So well done at putting that together.
I'm a little bit, as I say, a bit of a techno dinosaur. I'm just wondering, because we're doing all these dehornings next week, is there any sense in like putting a GoPro on, or have we done it all already? I mean, is everything
definitely
there?
That'd be cool.
Always need some footage, yeah.
How would it fit in? I mean,
yeah, we'll make it fit in. Don't worry. I mean, students are always wanting to see more footage. 100%.
Oh yeah.
Your job. Okay,
you just strap it on. I do everything else. That's exactly what happens.
Okay. All right,
we'll just move on from that comment. Yeah, that can be 100% right. But
I'm a bit slow. Look at these girls. They're all blushing.
They're loving that. We'll just ignore that. So just to finish up, take a pick out of lion, wild dog, or zebra, and we'll just finish up with some final footage for the night. So what would you like? Zebra, wild dog, or lion? Take your pick.
Zebra.
You guys okay with that?
Go on then. Let's do it, okay. Zebra.
Okay, let's check that out.
Today we've got a zebra that's been injured in a fight, and it's on a local wildlife estate here, so everybody is rightly concerned about it. So we had to firstly to try and catch him, dart him, and then proceed to treat him. So we're just making up the dart here, and then I will try and get close enough to dart him, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so he's gone down now, and we're just gonna go and see what's going on there. Okay.
Oh, that's
thanks, guys. Well done, eh? Yeah. Just cleaning it up with some peroxide, some chlorhexidine. Possibly a snip.
So a little bit of a snippet of some zebra stuff, maybe to come in the future, but we've got a lot to do before then. We've got to get through the pangolin side of things and a lot going on. So Peter and I will be working on lots of courses to come in the future. So obviously stay tuned. With that, just a reminder that these live streams won't always be on the society pages as they are now. We're going to move them into the members area very soon, but we're just giving you a chance to be introduced to Peter and sort of see some of the things we're working on, so you can start to see all the amazing sort of topics and courses that are coming. And then we're going to move it to the course area for you guys to get stuck in there. So any final questions from Nirvana, Yashu, or Molly for tonight? No? All good?
All good.
Any final words from you, Peter?
No, nothing. I'm just so glad to be able to touch base with all of you again. I look forward to these occasions.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And I mean, yeah, just amazing always just hearing what you've got to say. And your opinions and your background is just so valued. And yeah, just thank you so much again. And I'm sure all the students watching will feel the same. Anyone watching this on replay, remember you can still post your questions in the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And the plan is to check in with Peter once per month. So the first Tuesday of the month is the plan, and we'll keep giving you updates, but you can contact Nirvana, Yashu, or Molly at your unis about any specific updates or any questions you got or any sort of course questions or how this all works. Feel free to reach out to them or myself. And yeah, we'll help you through that. But thank you so much again, everyone. Just so nice to obviously have you guys online again. And yeah, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
See you soon.
See you later.
Thank you
Bye.
both.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much, Peter.
Thank you very much. Bye.